Yes, live. Sunday evening, the 18th of May, 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Resurgence News, and we've got some killer stories to talk about this evening. We're going to talk about Keir Starmer and a supposed Ukrainian male model. What's going on there? We're going to dive deeper into that. We've had Iranian terrorists hitting a few towns up and down the country, including my hometown of Swindon, which is very, very disturbing. We've seen this weekend large anti-immigration protests in Birmingham. We're going to be asking what's going on here, what's pushed all this to suddenly come about. We're also going to talk about artificial intelligence. Is it now getting out of control? Is there too many people relying on that? So without any further ado, let's roll that intro. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining our live stream on this Sunday evening. I'm Martin Costello, and as ever, I'm joined by my fantastic co-host, Debbie Hicks. Good evening, Debbie.
Thank you, Martin. Likewise to yourself. How are you? Long time no see. We haven't done the show in a while, have we? So
I haven't. I've just been. I'm come out of my box today. I've been put away for a bit, so I'm out again now. But how are you, Debbie? After your operation.
I'm really good considering, actually. Trying to get back to normal. It's a whole conversation we can have another time, maybe on the show about, healthcare and your health journey and everything. It's taught me so much about health and getting better. But
big story we've got there coming up. But
So but no, I'm a lot better. Thank you. I'm active again and get back to normal. So
great to see you, a real hero in the freedom movement. Right. So without further ado, let's get on to our first story. Now, this is very, very interesting. Now, I think about earlier this week, Keir Starmer, our beloved Prime Minister, had an arson attack at his home. We didn't know what it was. He called it an attack on democracy, but it turned out to be something more than that, something very, very odd. It turns out that the guy who got arrested for it was a 21-year-old Ukrainian model. This chap here apparently has 3 arson attacks on his home, and he went to court just recently. Now this has happened. Of course, it's not the far right thug that obviously the establishment was hoping for. It's none other than Ukrainian, the very country where the all that money has been sent out to fund that corruption. There's a picture there of a car being set on fire. But it goes further than that now. Some people are suggesting that there's a lot more to it. We've heard rumours about Keir Starmer and his sexuality and stuff, which obviously whatever he does is totally up to him. But I'm just going to quickly play a video now. Some other guy suggesting there might be a little bit more to it.
Well, look what we got here. It seems like the guy that set fire to Starmer's old houses was a rent boy from Ukraine. What's going on up there? Yeah, it seems like this guy was a Ukrainian rent boy, and he'd set fire to 3 things from Starmer's old house. I wouldn't like to say what's going on there, but it does sound a little bit suspicious considering he's a bit on the verge, if you see what I mean. Now, I think if you go and look into it properly, you'll see that his old mate might be involved as well, but it seems like he must have done something wrong for this old Ukrainian rent boy to get his own back and set his car on fire.
Very strange indeed. So a lot of allegations there, but of course the biggest one, I suppose, the embarrassment for Keir Starmer, because he didn't know prior to that, and he was calling it an attack on democracy. And of course, it turns out to be Ukrainian as well, he's over there all the time. What do you think Keir Starmer's feeling about this? And it's very funny. It all seems to be brushed under the carpet all of a sudden, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what you think, but I did think it was a bit strange when I heard about it because, let's be honest, he has top security around him and his properties at all times. So the first questions for me, I mean, obviously this is the way we have to discuss this on a show like this. But the first question for me is, how did somebody know where his private residence is? How did they know? And then secondly, how did they manage to get so close, or even in the property? I'm not quite sure what happened. The picture I've seen, it looks like it's the garden. I don't know. But even so, if you've got near to the garden or near the property, how have you managed to get that close when you've got maximum security? It's just too many questions that seem a bit strange to me. And this strange kind of coincidence that we're supposedly in a Cold War at the moment with the Ukraine, not a proper full-on war, but we're moving towards that. And this person happens to be Ukrainian. And with the rumours, of course, about his sexuality, which, to be honest, I don't even care about, but the fact that it's all these links, it's a bit strange, isn't it, Martin?
Very, very strange. And talking about Ukraine, actually, I mean, that's going interesting as well, because obviously Macron and all the Europeans seem to be, oh yeah, we're going to send more money out there. We've got to stop horrible Putin, this war. There was a delegation, I think, met up recently, Ukrainians and Russians. That was a bit fiery. Donald Trump was asked about this, and he actually said that he said nothing will happen, no peace will happen until he and Putin sits down. So this must be very embarrassing for Keir Starmer, though, when he's had someone like this nationality attacking his own home. Probably because, if the truth be told, a lot of Ukrainians do not like Zelensky either, because he's been throwing people to the meat grinder out there, all sorts of ages. They've been getting kids, dragging kids off the street and throwing them onto the front line to be slaughtered. And it's a totally needless war. It should have been stopped ages ago. We know Boris Johnson as well scuppered a peace deal, I think, in 2022, because as per usual with these globalist elites, there's no money in peace, so they want war all the time. So it has to be said, probably someone like Trump getting together with Putin's our only chance here. I don't know if it was noticed as well, Debbie. Trump actually went out to the Middle East last week to find trade deals out there, which is, I think that's quite a positive thing. Do you think?
No, I disagree, actually, because when you look into it, I think it's quite worrying deal that he's done with the Saudis. I mean, if you look at, I don't know what the figure is. I've read lots of different quotations on the figure, but I think it's at the very least in the billions, £1 billion deal to put real estate on, the Gaza Strip, which to me is just just a site full of the bones of dead children and people. And I find it quite offensive to be doing real estate deals with the Saudis. And the Saudis, I don't know what people have perception they have of Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia is not exactly a country with a human rights record that you'd think a Western democracy would want anything to do with, and B, when we start unraveling this a lot more, as I'm sure those listening have, there's a long record there of the United States controlling much of Saudi Arabia anyway. So when he said, I think he tried to sort of say that he'd separated himself from Netanyahu, which of course a lot of people would agree with on the surface. I certainly would, because Netanyahu's, it's quite horrific what he's been doing in the Middle East. But, to me, it's just now by proxy, it's doing the same thing, but you're doing it through Saudi Arabia. So I find it, I find it quite worrying what's going on in the Middle East. I think what's going on with the Ukraine is although it's not a different issue, it is connected, but I think he seems to be playing a different kind of strategy with Russia, and I can see what you're saying with that at the moment. But with the Middle East, I think I find it really worrying what's happening.
I was not aware of that real estate deal. Actually, I wasn't aware of that at all. The only deal I heard about was, I think, the Saudis were going to give 600 billion or something for like 160 odd Boeing planes or something. But
right.
lot more to
maybe we can dig it up and share it next time. I should have done it. But yeah, it's I've read it in quite a few places now. I'll send it to you and we can share it next week if you like. But
yeah, no, I didn't know that. That's quite interesting. Yeah, very.
I find it quite worrying. I really do, and I think I think we need to all watch. We always talk about World War III, unfortunately, and the way it's developing, and I think we all need to watch what's happening around Gaza and around that area of the world, because I think there's signs that there could be a militaristic build-up as well with what's happening around, which I think a lot of countries have stayed away from doing for a long time, which in my opinion has been wrong as well. I think when there's a genocide, I think countries should get involved. I don't like war. I don't like it at all. But to me, when there's a genocide, I think people should get involved. But I think it's coming to that kind of crunch point now. So it's worrying. It really is. So
very worrying. Well, we'll stay in the Middle East for our next story now. Now this, I say we stay in the Middle East, but we're coming much closer to home. None other than Swindon, our home. This story here now is about the Met Police. People may have seen this last week. They apparently foiled an Iranian terror attack very soon before it was supposed to have happened. And Home Secretary Yvette Cooper thanked the police for disrupting it. The biggest counter-terrorism operation for years. I think I got a video showing a minute of this going on. But one of the most worrying things, I say comes close to home, it happened in Manchester, Rochdale, and Swindon as well. Let me just show a video of the operation that went underway. Awful seeing this on our streets, really. Very, very disturbing there. Debbie, we had a chat before the show, actually, and we discussed about Swindon being involved, because obviously we both know Swindon very, very well. And we decided it wasn't really sort of place that you'd find perhaps an Iranian terrorist, would it? What did you think about that?
Yeah. No, when I first heard the report the first time, so there's been 2 arrests, haven't there? 2 visits to, and I think the same area as Swindon, which I don't know if I even want to say the area of Swindon, because as we discussed earlier, I think for all the innocent people that are peaceful that live there, it's not fair on them to keep naming a road or an area, because I think it creates that kind of divisiveness. I just found it a bit strange because even though there's a small Islamic population, that might include Iranians in Swindon, I think compared to other groups in Swindon, it's very small. For Swindon, it's not like, as you said, other cities in the UK where you've perhaps got more of people that might be from that background, if you get what I'm saying, in terms of the people that were arrested. So I found it a bit strange that it was in Swindon. I also found it a bit strange that it was in an area where there's been some kind of, unhappiness about protests, Martin. I know there's been different protests as well. We're always talking about, you get protests at loggerheads. I think you've had the pro-Gaza protests that have gone along that area of Swindon, but also other people that are against that, I think. So there's been tension. And my belief, and it's just a belief, is that a lot of terrorism is state-sponsored terrorism, in the sense of its governments kind of are involved. Yeah. I mean, even the late Robert Cook, who was a former foreign secretary, alluded to this. He said,
before he's murdered,
really famous quote, he said something about Al-Qaeda being the CIA database. So it's on the record that even people in power admit that terrorism is a homegrown intelligence service creation. So with all those things in mind, I just questioning what's going on with Swindon being in the frame. It's just really is a bit bizarre to me, Martin. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they could be. I mean, they could be fanning the flames here again, trying to deliberately raise tensions, because they wouldn't normally get that from Swindonians, because we are a very peaceful and welcoming community as well. As we said before, when people in Swindon, they always vote for the next government. So it's a very sort of like mediocre place. I suppose if it was the Simpsons, it'd be the Springfield sort of thing. It's very level sort of thing. That's why they do a lot of surveys and things here. So it just felt a bit like they're trying to fan the flames of some division here or something again, which we know they like doing. And as you quite rightly pointed out in the past, you mentioned a state sponsored terrorism. We know what happened with Iraq and all that, the way there was a lot of false information put out, these weapons of mass destruction, all that sort of thing, to have a reason to attack. Because we know on the global scale now, there's been like threats to Iran and vice versa, because obviously they got nuclear capabilities. So could there be something? Are they preparing us, getting us mad for something, so they got the right to go and liberate them again, as the West have liberated places like Iraq and Syria? That's what I've just got this horrible feeling that that's what they're up to, because there's no need to splash us all over news that was the case. These sort of things go on all the time, but they made a big deal about this.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a really important point that you've made, in the sense of, to me, if there was genuine terrorism that was a threat to our security, to me, it's almost like a teacher role. I remember when I was a teacher, your first priority as a teacher is to protect your students. And if you were in a genuine MI5 or MI6 that are about protecting citizens, you think about what's the best way to do that. But to me, plastering it all over the media that there's a potential terrorist living next door to you, all that does is create fear. And also what it does, it creates reactions from people where then they might become a bit more radicalized. Yeah. So you're creating, we keep borrowing, forgive that we'll have to get David Icke on if we can one day, his phrase, problem, reaction, solution. But I honestly feel like if that was me and I was an intelligence officer and I was genuinely doing it to protect people, I wouldn't want it splashed all over newspapers. Would you? Do you see what I'm saying? And I especially Swindon, and I just find Swindon, it just seems like a bit of a red herring. It's almost like powers that be almost want something to happen in Swindon. That's how it feels to me. And
we could have our own very 9/11 here in Swindon soon, for the way you asked.
Wow, I don't know about, but it's and also, is it very cynical of me to say, but isn't it strange how Swindon has a new Minister for Net Zero and Defence that's doing contracts for weapons that go to this part of the world that they're suggesting there's terrorists from in Swindon? Is it just a strange?
Yeah, good connection there.
Sorry, I can't help. I'm sure Will Stone's lovers will be not very happy with what I'm saying, but I just find it a bit of a coincidence it's in the same town.
Yeah. Apart from probably his mum and dad, the way things are going. And I don't think he's so adored all of a sudden after that. But that's a great connection you made there, actually. And as we talked about fanning the flames, and this brings us on to our next story. Of course, this weekend, there's always protests going up and down. There's a big one that obviously, as per usual, is never reported on the mainstream media. That's why you need to follow Resurgence News, because it's only us that show these stories. In Birmingham, there was a big protest against mass immigration. I'm not sure exactly who it was organised by, but there's a quick clip of how it went.
And we got to make it all the way up to the top of this hill here.
Now, massive turnout there by all accounts. Something that's, we've seen pop up in other parts of the country as well. We've seen protests outside these migrant hotels. And of course, we know, obviously, they don't do anything because hundreds, literally hundreds, are illegal immigrants are coming to this country on a daily basis, and nothing's happening. Then we had a chat before the show, actually, didn't we? And we spoke about how these issues are probably now starting to kick up because they haven't been spoken about before, and now, you know, it's like shaking a Coca-Cola bottle and it's getting all fizzy. And it's because people have been ignored. Perhaps people are starting to actually genuinely be radicalized, and this myth of the far right, perhaps that will turn into something real soon if this goes on. Yes. You know, does it concern you about these sorts of scenes that are happening in our towns and cities?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's to be honest, I think the whole thing at the moment is so inflamed, and we talked about this before, and it's a hard debate to have. And it's interesting because there's a friend that I know that I connected with during the lockdown who comes from a former sort of left background, and we had a phone conversation a few days ago about this topic because we both noticed a post from quite a well-known author who was talking about what Keir Starmer said about language barriers. And what we both agreed on was that although it was very opportunistic and he was clearly using it, and like they all do, you know, politicians to ignite things, kick things off. What I said in response to this post from this well-known author was that, well, actually, maybe there's something in this, in the sense of what I've noticed, and we try to sort of look at this in a very rational way, is that not so much that the migrants that have come over to work, whether it's in our public services or NHS, not that they can't speak English, but sometimes there's a barrier to the level of English that we can understand. And I think things like that over the last, I don't know, I think it's probably from the mid-90s onwards, where, you know, there's been a rising level of migration to meet this economic need in the country, which is what we're not having a proper discussion about, is why has this happened? I don't think it's just that politicians, there's a big debate that it's been done deliberately to incite people, but it's not just that. There has been a genuine economic issue in the UK where for such a long time, the birth rate's been dropping and dropping for the last century. And in its place, people are getting older. So you've got two kind of opposing trends. So you've got less people that are of a working age to keep the economy going. And you've had a rising number of people that are, I think it's kind of leveled out now, but people that have left the country to work elsewhere because, and this is where the politicians are at fault, there's not lucrative enough jobs and careers in this country for doctors, for nurses. I mean, you look at what they earn in Australia. I mean, I don't know if you ever looked. It's completely incomparable to here. It's much better standards. And so we've got all these problems that no one's talking about that's led to this problem where they have been rising levels of immigration into the country, legal immigration, which is where the numbers are actually compared to the refugees and the asylum seekers. It's quite small, that number, but the legal immigration has gone up in the last, 10, 15 years. It's gone up. Debate about what are we going to do? This is what I'd like to hear a debate about, you know, and no one's talking about it. I don't hear Reform talk about these things, you know. I don't hear anybody. I don't hear the left talking about it. I don't hear Keir Starmer, who just jumps on it and uses it as well. And it's like, how do we address all these problems that we have? Because I do agree. I do agree that, you know, in this process of people coming over that perhaps might work here for 10 years and, you know, understandably earn a bit of money and go home again. I understand why they do it. That we might lose a sense of cohesion, language problems, people not coming together properly.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because Keir Starmer actually echoed words of Enoch Powell this week, talking about an island of strangers. You know, I think to have a sensible immigration system, because no one's like saying, oh no, we shouldn't. That's where it always gets blurred, and like they throw out like the racist things and all that. People aren't saying, you know, there shouldn't be immigration, but there should be a need for it. So I think in Australia you've got a points-based system. So, you know, the thing is, you get loads of people coming over, but they're not doctors, that puts then a big strain on the NHS, because all those migrants will also need doctors. So it needs sort of a way of getting the skills that we need in, without overwhelming the infrastructure, because of course we need more doctors and nurses in our NHS because a massive lack of them. But you can't just have unregulated immigration, because all those migrants also need doctors. And that's why the NHS is absolutely crumbling apart, because they always put an excuse, oh, without the NHS, without migrants, the NHS wouldn't exist. And of course they play a massive role in keeping it going. But the problem is, when the majority aren't doctors and nurses, they're also putting pressure on the NHS. And the same with schools, everything. And of course, you quite rightly mentioned, most immigration, is legal, and that's fine. The other thing that winds people up, though, I suppose, though, is the way that our borders can still be breached, basically, by people who have no business being here. They're not fleeing war. They're always young men, mostly. That's a big concern, because these people are being put around in communities as well, near schools and things. And we've seen, when you've got a vast amount of young males coming in, hot red-blooded males are obviously going to want a girlfriend and stuff. It's going to cause a lot of problems in future. That is the problem, We've got housing crisis as it is. There is no excuse living on an island that we shouldn't be able to defend our borders, but they are deliberately letting these people in. Make no mistake, Keir Starmer and a lot of the rest of them, they could have dealt with this ages ago, but they want these people to come because they're making money out of housing them in hotels, HMOs, and they're really being encouraged to come over. We can't blame the migrants who want them to do that. Anyone would do it if they could see what they could get. The incentives there to risk their lives. Because, if they were genuine refugees, they wouldn't be traveling across the channel when they're in the EU. So it's obvious there's far more to it. And sadly, once again, money is the root of all this. Do you think
no, absolutely. And it's part of a much bigger debate, isn't it? Which, strangely enough, somebody that I don't normally agree with posted something on about what's going on in the Middle East. It's all these issues are connected. It's like all these problems we're talking about, whether it's the arms trade, which is probably one of the biggest economies in the world, the selling of arms, and you're talking about Swindon and Will Stone, and the traffic in people, the traffic in arms, the traffic in body parts, children. All of these things are part of this horrific economy that's got out of control, this global economy. And it all comes back to the same thing. We need a different economy. We've got to change it all. And I say we, because it's not going to come from those that are making the money from it, is it? And I think we have to accept that we might all have to live in a different way, because it does produce vast amounts of wealth and money, that kind of system. For America, for Europe, it has done for a long time. And I think we all have to accept, don't we? If we don't want a world that's like that, and I don't, we might have to think about, do we have to live in a more humble way as human beings? Because that's it, isn't it? We also need to do our riches and our,
You're absolutely right. The West has exploited cheap slave labor for too long, even with China and all the rest of it, You're quite right. If we want a more better life, we have to be more humbled way of doing that. And, people should accept that as well. We've got no extra right to be far more better off than others at the expense and the detriment of other people as well. That's a brilliant point. It's a massive subject, but, it's a shame that this is still going on, really. It should have been dealt with a long time ago. But like I said, only we can change it.
But war has been a tool for power and division for thousands of years. It's just that the last 200-300 years, it's become about weapons and more advanced weapons. And I think this is where it's reached a new level, hasn't it? It's become an economy. It's become a big economy. And I think this is where technology is. I know we're going to come on to our next subject, actually. It's quite interesting. But, there's a word for someone, I think, is it Luddite? The Luddites historically were the ones that were anti-technology. I do think that technology is not our friend in many ways, in the sense of it kind of opens up the possibilities for corrupt people to do all things. But anyway, yeah.
No, that's a great, you're actually banging on it. And that's a great lead to our next story, actually, because obviously we mentioned earlier about work and stuff and the need for migration and stuff. But of course, now our next story is about artificial intelligence. So this here is an article about the trends, and they're starting to be used more and more, and people are concerned over many things about putting others out of job because most of it's going to be automated now. A lot of people using things like ChatGPT at work. Apparently, it's added money to the economy. And it's increased by 600% over the last 10 years. I reckon probably most of that's been the last year or two, to be honest. So there's a massive automation coming here. Debbie, what's your thoughts on where this is heading, really? Because we're quite in its infancy at the moment in some ways.
Yeah, it's. I did look at this briefly earlier, but I'm just trying to look at it again. Yeah, it's. This was just literally a couple of weeks ago as well. This report has come out on how much the UK, I think, is the leading country in Europe for using artificial intelligence. So it's very relevant to us in the UK. And the reason this sparked my interest is I've really noticed it a lot lately, that it's creeping into everything and becoming normalised. Literally, I'd say in the last year. And I think it started, and I did think it was very ominous, with the strange pictures of the Princess of Wales, where there was a big debate that they'd been altered.
I remember
artificial intelligence. Do you remember there was that big debate about it? And at the time, I thought it was a bit strange. It was almost like, let's get a debate going with the public so that people get used to. I felt like that's what it was. You get used to seeing AI and not knowing whether it's real or whether it isn't. And I've noticed in the last year, all over social media, videos that are clearly artificial intelligence, or is it CGI? I don't know the names. These things, they alter it all. And some of them even have a label on. I think they have to, don't they, where it says AI. I've seen countless videos. I see, I'm sorry, I'm going to call these people out. There are people like us that are freedom lovers. They claim they're freedom lovers that are pushing this stuff on social media, Martin. AI videos, things that they've mocked up and created with AI. And then people that get onto ChatGPT, ask it a question, and then share the question with the freedom community. And I'm thinking, is it just me? But I'm thinking, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is the beast, if you like. This is the kind of the beast that we're fighting. Is this system that's going to be being used to control us? But we're kind of participating in it.
You might as well ask BBC Verify, really. Probably give you the same answer. This is an interesting part here, actually, because it says about the Brits' concern about AI here and the percentage. So 42% are actually concerned about the dependence on AI and the loss of human skills, which is a very good point. Autonomous AI systems make a decision about human intervention. That's just basically what you were just suggesting there. I suppose, you can ask it something, but it doesn't mean it's absolutely correct. It might not understand anything, and it might make other mistakes or things that aren't morally correct either, I suppose, because that's one thing AI can't have is a set of morals. 39% on job displacement and impact on employment, 38% privacy and data, and there's also concerns about ethical implications, potential misuse. I mean, the thing is, we're we are in its infancy at the moment, and it has come on so far in such a short space of time. People probably are rightly concerned to think how far this could go. It's not unforeseeable that it could actually start thinking more for itself, sort of thing. Of course it would. Then it might think, well, these humans are really slowing me down here. Do I really need them? It might sound sci-fi or Skynet or whatever that film was, but that could seriously happen. That could seriously happen. People should be very concerned about how far this is going, or the actual need for humans. So even if people are in control of these AI, at what point do they think, well, most of these humans are useless eaters, as Klaus Schwab called us, and they're not needed anymore? Where do you think this might lead us, Debbie?
I think it's part of the plan, isn't it? It's rendering us quite useless, isn't it? All of us. If you've got a computer that can come up with a more intelligent answer than a human being, and some of these ChatGPT, which I'm not sure what that stands for, that I've seen shared on social media about issues that we're interested in, actually. Some of it's really like, well, that's a really intelligent answer. you know, and when you can see it's already surpassing the kind of intellectual capacity of human beings. And I find it quite scary, because it's not so much the fact that it can't come up with an intellectual answer or an intelligent answer that human beings can't. It's the fact that ultimately all AI, all computer technology is controlled by a human being that is corrupt. You know, this is, as you said, that film, I've forgotten the name of it, The Terminator, isn't it? It's not so much that these things are really intelligent and scary and can kill us. It's because they're going to be programmed to do it. And then that's when it gets out of control. And I think that's what scares me. Is
well, they don't have any thoughts or feelings, do they? Because all the thing is looking at things of binary, either on and off sort of thing. If they see something that's inefficient to them, then it's going to act upon that accordingly, isn't it? Or go around it in other ways.
And if it's programmed to do that, which of course it is, it's not. There's not any emotion, is there?
Exactly.
There's no humanity to it. It's just cold decisions. And
exactly.
But then there's that whole debate, isn't there? As you're saying, is like, can it become conscious, aware of its existence and other people's existence? And there's too many ethical questions and where it's taking us. But it's more the fact, I think, that it's just rendering us useless that it really concerns me. The fact it's going to take jobs, as it says here on the statistics, taking jobs, taking the need for human beings to do things, not just AI, but automated systems as well, and robots. Then I think it's not good for us, is it, as people? I mean, what are we going to do? What do we do? The most important thing as a human being is that you're functional, is that you do something.
Exactly, have consciousness. Because I've even seen, like, they've got these robots now that really look lifelike, and they're like suggesting that people could have them as like a girlfriend and stuff like that, because they talk and they react and they move around. You know, I mean, who'd want a robotic girlfriend, you know, doing that?
Well, you know, there'd be probably quite a few that might like that. Probably. But I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's very moral, ethical issues there, isn't there, in terms of where this is leading human relationships. If people think they can have a robot that they switch on and off and get it to do what they want, whether it will do that, as you said, but you know, they might. There's going to be this move away. And I think both men and women could probably do that, away from proper human relationships and towards something. And I find that, you know, and also in terms of reproduction and having babies and things like that. I mean, if you've got robots that, you know, they've got all this technology now that can have babies as well.
Why even need it? Might seem quite philosophical. But also, you know, when you think about humanity, as we know, it's only been like really recorded and stuff last couple of thousand years. Is it really inconceivable that something like this has happened thousands and thousands of years ago and it's destroyed itself in some sort of way? You know, how have all these other empires collapsed in some sort of way? You know, there's so many questions. I can't just think that this is the first time in humankind something like this has come about, sort of thing. You know, it's just something dangerous. You know, it's just something else to think about, really, I suppose. But anyway, we're coming to the end of our show now. But before we go, Debbie would like to talk. Well, to talk about a gentleman that she used to work with, a council, I believe, wasn't it? And just pay tribute to him. Let me just get this tab up now. The amazing John Marjoram, who recently passed away. So, Debbie, tell us more about this chap. I think you met him. Was it in the great cold of 2020, as I call it now?
Well, it's an interesting story, and the reason I wanted to share it is I think it's proof that, you know, people that can be adversaries, I can always say that word, you know, people that don't necessarily get on with their beliefs or politics can actually get together and work together. Because what happened is as I've mentioned before, I used to be active for Labour well before the lockdown. I moved away before the lockdown. But when I was, he was quite a key councillor and a key figure in the Green Party in Stroud, where I used to live. And I never got on with him. He didn't like me. I think it's just the fact that I was quite an active kind of Labour activist. And that's why he didn't like it, because these people, what politics like, they see you as a threat if you're quite active and you're quite good at, good at being active. And I look back now and I find it quite amusing, but it wasn't at the time. And I remember I was running for council, Martin, for Labour. And we called it the Battle of the Boards, because what he used to do, and he was quite an elderly man at the time, he was quite a character, is he used to go around at Stroud at night time knocking all my boards down.
Wow.
I look back now and I find it really funny, but at the time it was like, it was very tribal. And then some of the local people that I work with in the Labour Party, they didn't like him and he didn't like them. And of course, I was seen as the target as well, even though he didn't even know me personally. It didn't matter. So anyway, there was this situation, and I remember just before the lockdown, I passed him at the train station and he muttered something under his breath. I don't know what it was. And I thought, God, he doesn't like me. And anyway, lockdown came, didn't it? And I actually know I was I made a stand really quite early on in the lockdown, and I got so much grief for doing it. And we did this. I did this with other people, this protest that I organised in the park, which was really heavily policed by police from London. And there was lots of arrests. I was arrested. And John, at that point, he'd been in touch with me and some others that I knew. He was with us. He completely... Wow. He completely agrees with what we were standing up against. I remember he come up to me in the high street as well, and he was like, I agree with what you're doing. Well done. I'm really impressed by you.
Wow.
We need to put differences aside. And we did put our differences aside. And he came along I tried to find the footage. I can't find it anywhere online. It's probably on YouTube. He came along to this protest and he spoke with such emotion about an elderly lady that had died in a care home, I think, from these policies, these horrific anti-lockdown policies. And he was very upset and he spoke from the heart. And from that moment onwards, we had a kind of an affinity and a kind of an understanding. And when the newspapers put out that I had a £10,000 fine, which I didn't, it was a lie because the newspapers were lying. But when he heard, he got in touch and said, we're gonna make sure we raise the money for you, Debbie, don't worry.
Wow.
And I just wanted to pay tribute to him. I really did, because I think John, despite all that differences, we put all that aside and we came together. And I think I want to say to people, this is what we should all try to be like. Is if we've got things in common and we agree, let's come together. Let's stop fighting. Because all that stuff, I can look back now and say, how stupid was that? We were like living kids over boards, and.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, does it? That's what matters in life, is coming together over what really, really counts. And so rest in peace, John. I'll always remember you. And makes me quite tearful, actually. Really decent man. Yeah, really good man.
No, that was really interesting to hear that. And
he was agreeing. So there you go. We're all quite different, aren't we? And he was agreeing.
Yeah.
So,
he'd probably be discussing a lot of the Green Party stuff at the moment, the way they've going and what they support.
From what I've heard, I think he was quite unhappy with the way the Greens said, yeah.
But no, I think that's a really lovely message and a great tribute there from you, Debbie. And it, like you said, it just goes to show at the end of the day, we all really want the same things and we have to break these barriers down. Don't let them divide us. And, John galvanized that when, when he supported you, for that really, really difficult period. So, absolute salute on there. Incredible, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it's about standing by your principles and coming together, isn't it? I think that's what's so important. And
exactly. A lot of people could learn a lot from him, I'd imagine. And so, huge loss to Stroud there. Right. Yeah. Well, we'll call it a close there. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining the show tonight. Fantastic to get back on. Great discussion there, Debbie. Did you have any last closing thoughts before we sign out?
No, just go out and enjoy the weather. The boiling temperatures that we're told to stay out of. Go. Yeah.
No, that's great.
Apparently, you're not allowed to wear sun cream. You've got to wear sun cream as well. So.
Yeah.
Apparently you're going to get into trouble from now on if you don't wear sun cream. So.
Yeah, you'll be locked up in Keir Starmer's 2-tier thing probably if you don't do as you're told. But no, So yeah, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining. Have a great week, and we shall see you all very soon. Good night.